Walk through the halls of an 18th century Rococo palace, and you feel the weight of an aristocracy in decay. Every surface is crusted with gold, drowning in floral motifs, and suffocating under its own visual excess. For Enlightenment thinkers, this heavy ornamentation was repulsive. Armed with new breakthroughs in science and sociology, they viewed this aesthetic as a symptom of a morally corrupt and irrational society. This created a crisis for architects. They realized they were living in an unstable age, and the buildings around them reflected an outdated hierarchy. They needed a style that could physically mirror mankind's new command over reason. Stripping the plaster vines and gold leaf off the walls was an act of social hygiene. Erasing the aristocratic aesthetic was the first step in engineering a rational society. The search for this style coincided with a massive archaeological race. The unearthing of Pompeii and Herculaneum sent architects scrambling across the Mediterranean to study the ancient world firsthand. What they found left them in awe. Standing before massive, decaying Roman engineering and ancient Greek temples, they experienced a quiet, overwhelming terror induced by the sheer scale and immense age of the ruins. But the most crucial realization was analytical. These architects recognized that simply copying ancient shapes was useless. To build for their own time, they had to reverse engineer the structural logic of antiquity. This process of using ancient math to construct modern spaces became Neoclassicism. It is the central paradox of the era. To move forward, these architects looked back, treating crumbling masonry as a set of mathematical proofs for a new way of building. In 1753, a French abbot named Marc-Antoine Lagier published an essay proposing a radical shift. He called for an architecture that followed the laws of nature rather than the whims of fashion. Lagier based his theory on the primitive hut. The ideal building consisted only of essential structural elements, 4 columns supporting a pitched roof. His thesis was absolute. Beauty derives strictly from structural necessity. If a piece didn't hold a load, it was a flaw. Architects translated this theory into monumental reality. Jacques-Germain Soufflot's Pantheon in Paris combined the airy engineering of a Gothic church with severe, exact Greek geometry. Design shifted from decorative display to a physical articulation of natural laws. Each stone and column now served as a rigorous proof of physics. When the French Revolution dismantled the monarchy, the new republic required monuments that could communicate absolute civic authority to the masses. Architect Étienne Louis Boullé answered this by taking Lagier's logic to its extreme. He removed all remaining ornament in favor of massive, pure geometry, spheres, pyramids, and cubes. The ultimate expression of this ideology was his unbuilt cenotaph for Isaac Newton. By manipulating scale and light, Boullé intended to simulate the cosmos inside the sphere. The crushing immensity of the blank walls was designed to induce a sense of tranquility and awe. Boullé used the sheer weight of these shapes to humble the observer. By removing human scale, he made the individual feel small and the rational state feel eternal. The Napoleonic era prioritized utility. The state needed hospitals, markets, and prisons, structures built for speed and economy. Architect Jean-Nicolas Louis Durand took the grand geometric ideas of the Revolution and adapted them for rapid, cheap mass construction. He created a universal methodology based on a grid, breaking architecture down into interchangeable parts that snap together for any civic requirement. Durand wrote a rule book for architecture, prioritizing cost-effectiveness over artistry. Layouts were determined by the grid, not the architect's intuition. This modularity replaced bespoke craftsmanship with a standardized industrial formula. Building became an output of bureaucracy. This logic became structural rationalism, the belief that a building's form must be dictated by its structural truth and stripped of all unnecessary decoration. These principles were handed down directly to the pioneers of the 20th century. Look at Le Corbusier's Villa Savoye. With its white columns lifting a naked, unadorned box, you are seeing the evolution of the primitive hut. This exact ideology of modularity and structural honesty provided the framework for the corporate world of glass and steel. The stark, unornamented skylines of the present are not the result of 20th century machines. They are the physical legacy of 18th century philosophers executing a plan for a perfectly rational society.